lot of you will recognise as attending these meetings. Ian's going to be asking us to consider a question about managing work-related road safety, and does it apply to me? Me personally, it certainly does. Ian's going to be challenging us to review our organisation's approach to managing this particular risk and identifying our areas for improvement. A little bit about Ian, if you don't know him. He's an occupational road safety advisor, extensive experience in operational and policy development. He's a former chief inspector with the Metropolitan Police. As the National Roads Policing Strategy Manager, he undertook specific work on crime and disorder strategies, the ACPO's speed enforcement policy and occupational road risk. As the liaison officer to Transport for London, he developed the road policing policy in response to the Mayor's transport strategy and the London Road Safety Plan. He also developed a commercial vehicle education unit as part of the Fleet Operations Recognition Scheme, which supported the London Freight Plan. And since retiring from the police, he's pursued his interest in this area of managing work-related road safety and its links with sustainability and corporate social responsibility. It's included academic studies where he's taken an MSc in occupational safety in 2010, and he's worked as the FORS manager in Transport for London, a risk advisor to individual fleet operators, and providing guidance to various organisations about managing fleet safety. I don't think we need to say much more about his credentials. We have got a subject matter expert here. We can certainly hopefully be able to learn from that. So before I just hand over to Ian, we'll just ask that when we get to questions, if you've got questions, please put your hand up, wait for the microphone so that everybody can hear, and hopefully enjoy this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that introduction, Nigel. I hope over the next 35 minutes to raise your awareness of something that, to use Nigel's phrase, we need to rise to the challenge as safety practitioners. Not only do I feel there's a need to encourage companies to do the right thing in terms of their own operations, I think the links to me with corporate social responsibility and sustainability are something that I think there's some significant potential gains to have. So, managing work-related road safety, does it apply to me? The question for you. Some of you may be thinking what happened with that picture that's before you. I could have told you, could have said, that someone died as a result of being involved in an incident. I give you an appropriate health and safety warning that I will be referring to some fatalities, but there's no blood and gore. If anyone is affected in any way that feels they need to remove themselves from the burden, feel free to do so. In fact, there wasn't a fatality. There was simply a road blockage. You might be asking yourself why it occurred. If I pose the question to you how it happened, coming into the picture is a left-hand bend, and the HGV has gone round the bend, left-hand bend, and rolled over. Why is it rolled over? Speed is an issue? Yes. Sorry?
Moves.
Yes. It was inappropriately loading. It was only doing about 25 miles an hour. It was inappropriately loading with heavy on the lines, and it rolled over as a result of what we call steering. The net result was there was no injuries, not even to the driver. 4.5 hours road blockage in Pimlico, central London, which caused chaos. But it doesn't appear in the collision statistics, or should I say accident statistics, a word I don't like in this context, because no one was injured. So from the government's point of view, that didn't occur. From the stats that I'll refer to a bit later on. In this incident, it's something fairly similar. You can see the HGV in a slightly awkward position. But what's below the bridge? It's about a mile down the road from where the Southall train crash took place. It's the main Paddington to Wales route. Fortunately, the rubbish incident took place and the incident was reported promptly, and there was no untoward occurrence with regard to the train. But the Selby crash illustrates what can go wrong if you get the wrong thing at the wrong time. This incident, appropriate phrase, safe removal. Had that vehicle been a more substantial vehicle, it may well have led to Network Rail closing the road, closing the railway line because of the fear that the structure was being affected, which is bridge strikes, one of the common problems throughout the country. And if that is the case, the operator that's responsible gets a bill because commuters are entitled to claim the Network Rail for the delays. And they put their claims in, the Network Rail collect them all and then simply provide a bill. And I was at a conference once when a workshop where a company came out with a load of paper this size and said that was £60,000 and we've already got a year into the process, and they were told that they'd have to wait 3 years. So there are issues related to when safety goes wrong that other people are affected by it. In this incident in Harrow, it's a 30-mile-an-hour road. There's a slight right-hand sweeping bend, and you can see 2 vehicles on the left-hand side, plus a bus and a van. Clearly damaged, unattended parked. Next one, hit struck. The bus has come down and hit the 2 vehicles on the near side. Failed to negotiate the right-hand sweeping bend, not travelling too fast, within a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Has hit the transit van and knocked it sideways, demolishing a wall, which is where all the bricks are in the front. So it's hit it that side and shifted the whole Ford Transit across the park and into the wall, and demolished the wall. This is looking over the bus driver's left shoulder if he was still sitting in the bus. And the wheel is where the steering wheel sort of is. This is looking over the right shoulder of the bus into the bus, as if you're standing next to the bus driver looking in. And this is the other vehicle involved in the incident. Up till now, even with the driver who got a few scratches but nothing serious, unfortunately that cannot be said for the lady that parked the red car and walked round to the back of the vehicle. Walked round to the front of the vehicle, having parked, and was in the process of going shopping when this incident took place. It didn't need an ambulance crew or a doctor to confirm that the woman was dead, because she was literally in 2 halves on the road. A rather traumatic incident for the first officers on scene and the public that happened to be there at the time. But the implications go a lot further in terms of one person dying, tragic as it certainly is. She was a matriarchal figure, a parent, with 2 children, 11 and 12 years old, a boy and a girl. Her husband suffered from multiple sclerosis, and her 2 elderly relatives were also dependent on her. And you took her out of the equation, and the implications were felt far and wide, to put it bluntly. And my throat's just going slightly because I didn't deal with the family directly. I was in charge of the traffic carriage where one of my sergeants was acting as a family liaison officer, and the incident was investigated. He came back and he was a hard-nosed individual that spent all his time on territorial support group and only been in traffic a short while. And he said, I couldn't hack it when the girl fell on the floor and said, who's going to take me to school now? The implications for accidents, collisions as I prefer to call them, are significant, and substantial elements of mental health treatment in the NHS are a direct result of trauma associated with collisions, frequently with family members. In line with the Association of Chief Police Officers Road Death Investigation Manual, that incident was treated as an unlawful killing until the contrary is proved. In effect, it becomes a murder scene. Treated as vehicle homicide, the scene gets secure. There's a full scene investigation to gather all the evidence, which is why all of you in this room at some time, it's highly likely, have been stuck in a traffic jam somewhere as a result of an incident, which is being investigated in order to establish what happened and why. Because the police have a duty to the coroner, to the victim's family, and to society to investigate. A lot of murders tend to happen behind closed doors, though traffic fatalities happen in public spaces, and those public spaces need to be seen. Sometimes they can be quite extensive, so 6, 7, 8 hours is not unusual. There's a post-scene investigation, which probably you'll see the accident and collision boards on the side of the road saying, did anyone see what happened? Remember, they're looking for witnesses. The vehicle gets examined, the scene's taken away to establish if there's anything wrong. The driver goes to the ringer, eyesight check, driving licence, using mobile phones, drink drive, impairment, what happened, what were you doing for the last previous 48 hours. Frequently gets arrested on suspicion of causing fatal death by dangerous driving, and then probably gets released while the further inquiries are done. The environment gets checked in terms of road surface. Is there any defects on the road that could have contributed to traffic lights or the sequencing line? And more importantly, and most importantly, and relevant to you as safety practitioners as professional advisors to organisations, the issue of corporate responsibility. There is a protocol between the police and the HSE, which means that if there's sufficient evidence to indicate that serious management failures may have contributed, they get involved in that incident. And this has resulted in investigation going broader than simply use cause and permit. Coming back to this incident, this is the steering wheel. Looking down to the bottom of the picture is where it connects to the steering linkages. It's all cleaned up because it was subject to a metallurgical expert's examination. Because what wasn't clear was why did the driver hit several vehicles and not brake? They ruled out impairment, but the driver was walking around for 3 months, not at work, but feeling responsible for that collision, and people thinking that he was responsible for that collision, until the incident was investigated to the point where the bottom part of that steering geometry, there was a manufacturing defect, which is outlined with that circle in yellow, which meant that the driver suddenly found that the steering wheel didn't do anything. He simply turned the wheel. He never knows, even till this day I suspect, why he didn't brake early on. But his mental processes, which are understandable, just kept him turning the wheel. And it wasn't until quite late in the day, in the terms of the incident, that the braking took place and a lot of speed was lost as a result of the impact. That's about as close to an accident as I would care to go. The driver is exonerated, but the company was done failing to maintain, which is an absolute offence, there's no defence. But what you have is this photograph taken from the local Hanover Gazette that was in the public domain within about 3 days after the incident. And it was 3 months before an explanation took place. In the meantime, the driver had to live with the consequences. The bus company had to live with the stigma associated with this. The financial costs only guess at, but there was a lot of voter activity, being inspector activity at the bus garage, checking that other things were right or wrong, etc. There's all the costs associated with investigation. And I don't know how to put a price on the cost of the family of that lady being taken out of that central position within that family. Social costs are already indicated legal. And spare a moment to think about the reputational costs. You've got a woman and a certain degree of background is put in the public domain, but not all. And a big vehicle is responsible for the crash. It doesn't come as any surprise that they considered. But the big vehicle, the big company was responsible. And even if it's a car involved in it, with today's investigative reporting, if there's a work-related element to a company involved, they'll frequently find it out. So it's all about protecting the reputation, which is illustrated in this instance. You can't see the writing at the bottom, but basically it's grim reality, skip rolling, responsible for killing a cyclist. That's an emotive term, because at the point the photograph was taken as this vehicle was being carted away by police for a vehicle exam, as a result of being involved in an incident. Already conclusions are being drawn, and this is being posted on the internet. If you happen to be the owner, the company owner of a vehicle that blasted all your logo around the internet, it's not a happy sight, to say the least. Taking on to the next incident, the short version of this is Alex, 26 years old. Shortly after getting her MOC, he's cycling to work in 2000, going back quite a while. And she's killed as a result of an RMC concrete mixer lorry turning left. One of the early incidents that gathered press interest. But the mother of this daughter, didn't get what she felt in terms of fair play with the authorities. And a bit in terms of damage to reputation. She bought shares in the company, turned up to the AGM and said, I want to tell you a story. She was objective, passionate to a degree, but she overcome her resistance to undertake that activity. And as a result of that incident at the AGM, the chief exec of Cemex there said, we're going to sort this. And they are now one of the best examples, or certainly one of the list of best examples of companies that are managing this type of issue in London, which is actually quite politically sensitive. Just in case you think that it needs to be a big vehicle that causes a problem, it doesn't have to be. This vehicle was abandoned in this road in addressing West London as a result of being involved in an incident where a 6-year-old girl had run out in front of mother who was pushing the 9-month-old baby in a pushchair on Christmas Day. And this car did a near-side undertake, not that fast, using the bus lane, because most people in this shoot the bus lane is not in play. He decided he didn't want to stick with the queue, hit the girl's head hit the front of the bonnet, bounced off, and she died 1 week later. The individual was arrested subsequently as a result of a thorough investigation. But the point is, it doesn't need to be a big vehicle, it doesn't necessarily need to be travelling fast. It really leads me to something that myself and my colleagues, and I'm sure it still applies now, the difference between a favour and favour vision and no vision at all is timing. When I did my master's degree, I came across James Reason's Swiss cheese model, which I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with. And it puts a bit of theory into place to plan, complement, practical experience. And of course, linked to that are action and triangle, again the word excellent. There are just so many variations, and what you need to be able to do is manage the risks. In terms of managing the risk, TRL, Transport Research Laboratory, did a wide set of research, and this basically shows percentages. It adds up to more than 100 because they're doubling up, but basically what it's saying there is the road user, not necessarily the driver, but the road user was primarily responsible, in fact, almost exclusively responsible in 70% of mitigation. And then road and environment work together for 21%, and then road and vehicle, 2%. The road user bit adds up to 93%, and you sometimes hear that 95% of all crashes are caused by the driver. That's where that figure comes from. It's a little bit gilded the lily. But if you think of it, what's the fundamental issue at stake? It's attitude and behaviour. Inappropriate attitude, inappropriate behaviour. If you think about what the collision statistics say, these are the most common causes of crashes. They're recorded by police and reported to the DOT, Department of Transport. So you're looking at a database of about 250,000 collisions. Fail to look properly is by far the most significant one. And it's issues around did they look, and if they did they not understand what they saw and take appropriate action? I'll come back to this. Picking up on a couple of those, speed and inappropriate speed is a feature. So 30 mile an hour or 40 doesn't matter. For example, let's assume on a given day that someone, you, are driving down the road at 30 miles an hour and a child runs out of the football. The highway code says 9 metres, 14 metres, and you just stop. For one moment, forget about the distances and just think that whatever happens, you're travelling at the speed limit 30. The person runs out, the child runs out. You slam the brake, you react to slam the brakes, and you stop within each of the brake. And you go, near miss. What's likely to happen? Well, the person lives, there's no injury. 40 miles an hour. Are we going to stop in time? Okay. The big question is, and I'll put those up, and it's relatively proportional. What speed do you think the impact is? And it doesn't matter if you're driving a 911 Porsche. If you start with the premise that that's where the child is, I was here when I saw it, and I was doing 30, and I stopped with an inch to spare. I'll run back, know exactly the same scenario, but I'm doing 40. What speed do you hit the child at? Anyone like to have a stab?
15.
15?
I have 30.
That's not bad. 30 miles an hour. And the study work that's done on that, you've probably heard that 1 in 20 live if they're involved, 5%, 1 in 20 people would live if it's at 20 miles an hour. and 17, 85% would die at 14. At 30, there's a 45% chance of death. So 30 and 40 miles an hour is a difference. Does make a difference. But actually it's quite a challenge on occasions with vehicle fleet, work fleets, getting drivers to stick to the speed limits. Now let's see if this little video works. Let me just stop a second. What's the sound? So just bear with us a second. Okay. Right. Thanks for bearing with me. Our two other videos, and I'll definitely want to sound of them.
We get this down on the runway, so yeah? I need you to help me out, and we'll make it all right.
Amusing, but he was driving a vehicle shortly before. This is field impairment testing that's going on in this country, but that one was done in the States. A question for you, and self-answer. So at 9 PM, you drink that. When will you be alcohol free, we should say? There's a free in red at the end of alcohol. Because that's the best position to be in. So what time are you going to go to work tonight morning? Anyone have a guess?
D.
It's a bit of a trick question. You could all be correct. It depends. It depends on the size of the glass, the strength of the booze. We're frequently hearing the phrase calorie counting. Actually, that's still relevant to alcohol, but in this case, what we're more interested in is unit counting. There's not time to go into it, but it's a fairly easy way of working out when you refit. Because basically, we get rid of 1 unit of alcohol an hour. No matter what you do, you can't do it any quicker. Unless you throw up before you've had a chance to absorb it. So if you take 10 units on board, and a typical pint of beer, bottle of beer is 5%, 2.5 units, 2.5 hours. 80% of the people arrested for drinking and driving are going and driving in the morning after. And a lot of those will be people simply working for a living. And as a result of losing your licence, you could charge you won't be able to. So that's one of the issues to do with impairment. Picking up on the last one before I move on. Not an uncommon sight, yes? This was taken by a colleague of mine, passenger, not the driver. And this went on for about 6 or 7 miles. It's totally and utterly oblivious to what's going on. Now this incident, can you just see, actually, can anyone have a guess? This is a reflection of the front dash. Can anyone tell me what thing that is?
Mobile phone.
There's a bit of a hint to the topic we're talking about. Guess? Mobile phone. Okay. This video was downloaded by a transport manager and got a complaint from a member of the public. We've got the registration number and the telephone number, and rang them up and said, I've been travelling in a vehicle driving dangerously. This goes on for about 30 seconds. You need to be aware this is an HGV, and any movement left or right by more than 18 inches and you're outside your lane. The phone's been picked up. We're now over the hard shoulder, white line and back over. Now we're well over. If you happen to be a highways worker doing a breakdown, it doesn't get any worse than this particular bit, but what you do see here is a wander over again. Lack of lane discipline, and actually took a solid white line. The video stops here. Just to part that incident I referred to, if that individual had been involved in the paper, it will most definitely the video would have been seized. And that would have led almost without fail, because he was on the phone for 45 minutes, a series of phone calls whilst driving a 44-ton truck professionally. He would almost certainly be done for death by dangerous. Now, a bit of research was done by TRL back in 2001, just before the offence was introduced with mobile phone. Up until that point, there wasn't a specific offence. This bit of research was available, which shows that on a driving simulator with over 1,000 drivers, the key bit is if someone's having alcohol just over the legal limit, they will take it longer to react. What's interesting there is hands-free was worse than driving with just over the limit on alcohol because of the distraction. And handheld. The police were consulted at the time and had to be part of that process. And the only reason the offence of using a mobile phone hands-free wasn't introduced is the police couldn't work out how they were going to prosecute, detect it. So lots of companies have borne in mind the fact that it's a distraction. And several companies, lots of companies at one point went through putting hands-free kits in and then went along and took them all out and basically had a mobile phone policy. Now, just a bit of a hands up here. Who has in their organisation has a mobile phone policy? Lovely. You put your hands down. Who has one that actually constrains the use of hands-free? A bit less. And who has a policy that somehow gives advice? If I ring you up as a work colleague on a mobile phone number, I check as a desk-based, office-based individual to check whether or not you're driving or not and terminate the call. Who's got that? So a couple. And for me, we were working more and more as the questions went on to an appropriate set of control measures. Now moving on to managing work-related road safety. I'm just going to assume that it's now common knowledge that the Health and Safety Act applies to driving at work. The fact that the HSE don't do a lot with it is not the issue. What I would like to do is emphasise the word undertaking. And I'll come back to that. So if you're going to adopt a systematic approach to work-related road safety from a management perspective, you need to be thinking about corporate manslaughter. There is specific guidance called driving at work. Anyone seen that? Yeah, a few. Which talks about driving vehicle journey. Interesting, that was put out in 2003, and that's the only research, specific guidance with respect to managing, apart from the General Health and Safety at Work Act. management rates, etc. Driving at Work was updated, less pretty version, in April last year. And the reason I'm showing it is it talks about planning, doing, checking and acting. And that's fundamental to getting a grip of this issue of managing work-related road safety. Which, if you look at the statistics, they reckon that 1/3 of all people killed on the road are at work. And at work includes driving a company vehicle, driving a private vehicle for company purposes, and the whole issue of is commuting relevant or not. If it's commuting other than to your normal place of work, then it doesn't occur to you. If you're going to your normal place of work, it's normal commuting, it doesn't account. But that's getting into the technicalities of it. The highway code. Who's looked at this in the last 3 years? The last? Oh, a few more. And can you tell me why? Did you look at it for your own purpose or because your son or daughter was learning to drive? Because that's the normal answer. It is an ACOL, an approved code of practice. It's a real gem. It's got every bit of advice in here that you want. We haven't got time to go through it. But Highway Code Rule 126, with regard to an issue that was flagged as a problem, speeding. Stopping distances. You must drive at a speed that you will allow you to stop well within the distance you can see to be clear. Oh, why? Oh, if people comply with that basic rule. Your policies need to dovetail with this. And I recommend with my colleagues that when we visit companies, that one of the things we do is get a driver code of conduct issued, a one-pager, and in there, a bullet point is, I will adhere to the code and issue a highway code for £2.50. That's £2.50 you'll get. But if you are looking at something that you can get off the shelf, I would highly recommend you give some consideration to FORBS, Fleet Operators Recognition Scheme. It was a TfL initiative, but it's now gone national. You can get it easily online. And what I'm going to do with the next 5 slides is just briefly draw your attention to this document, because if you comply with it, then you're 9 parts of the way home. It talks about management, it talks about people, it talks about drivers, it talks about operations. Operations, basically journeys. In management, you have to have a management manual, procedures, you must designate responsibilities. There should be someone at board level that's responsible for this issue, along with other things granted. You must have effective communications with your staff, particularly drivers, and to reinforce the plan, do, check out. There should be a review process, and there should be some mechanism for noting that changes take place. And things like complaints dovetail into other things. Vehicles, an inspection and maintenance plan, a requirement that drivers check their vehicles on a daily basis, first use check. If you're an HGV, who operates an HGV over 3.5 tonne? One individual, over 2, 3. Anyone on 3? Okay. But who in this room has goods and services delivered or collected from their place of work by a vehicle that's over the size of a van? I would expect everybody. Because if anyone's got a canteen, if anyone's got paper, photostat paper to deliver, invariably they'll be delivered in 3.5 tonne vehicles upwards. All of those will operate under an operator's license. I haven't got time to go into it, but there's a regulatory regime in place that's supported by the courts. And in particular, it's got a vulnerable road user safety policy, that third bullet point in the bottom. And that's about the vehicles. In London, there's a move towards, if you want to be a member of force and be bronze accredited, and you're over 3.5 tonne, you've got to fit extra visual kit, signs down the near side, class 6 mirrors to see the blind spots. But as of September, London will be introducing effectively a system that's very similar to the anti-pollution air quality, whereby you'll get penalty charge notice if you don't comply with this in terms of the vehicle. So that's the vehicle spec. In terms of drivers, who in this room organisation check driving licences to check that they're valid? About 50%. And do you check it 6 months, thereabouts? Once a year. At least you do it.
Based on risk.
Sorry?
It's based on risk. It could be, depends how many points they've got. So it's annually is a default, but we have a risk assessment process which takes them through. So if they're high risk, every 3 months.
Okay, just in case anyone didn't hear it, the frequency of the checks are dependent upon a risk-based approach. 10 out of 10. Well, we might discuss whether it's 3 months, 6 months, but lots of companies now that are all doing this scheme need to do 6 months, and if you've got more than 6 penalty points. Because if someone drives for you and is unlicensed, got done for speeding at over 100 miles an hour on the motorway, you've got their license lost, and you don't have an appropriate duty of care demonstrated with a checking system in place, then you'll fall foul under traffic legislation. And then the reputational issue that comes up, that the individual just happens to be involved in seriousness. And there is a strong causal link, we haven't got time to go into the academic side, between offending and crash involved. You manage the people that are causing the problems in terms of offences, and you'll deal with 8% of the problem. Driver fitness and health. Falls advocates that you do an eyesight check every 6 months. That's not a go to an optician. That is, can you read that index mark, 20.5 metres? Yeah, you can do it. Who operates that? Anyone here? You. Because picking up on the issue that I said, look but did not see. If you haven't got the capability to see, because your eyesight is defective, then you're on to a non-starter. And monitor driving and driving standards. 2 bullet points that involve a lot of in-depth work. But it basically involves around ensuring that people comply with the highway code. And operations. The one that I would highlight there is, can you demonstrate that you have a system of collision investigation that will identify individual learning opportunity and appropriately deal with that individual, but also identify whether or not there are organisational issues. And I'm preaching to the converted in this room this evening today, when we are all aware of issues related to collisions, incidents, or accidents. Frequently there's an underlying management issue of the state. Quick question here. This is London, focusing because we are in London, and you presumably based in London. Can you align there's 5 groups in the pie charts. 2013 is the latest figures. Can you align the description, the road user group on the right-hand side of it? Who would like to have a stab at what the green is? Cyclists? Pedestrians? Does that surprise you? What is consistent, I've done it, year on year, is that 75% 76% of all the people killed and seriously injured. In 2013, it was 132 dead, far more than the workplace transport issues, by far, and there's more vehicle movements. 75% year on year of pedestrians, cyclists and power to arenas. And why is that?
Vulnerable.
You're wide vulnerable. No protection, haven't got a tin can around. And just a little bit of additional work that I shared with this group or previous group a couple of years ago is fatal collisions resulting in collision involving goods vehicles for an 8-year period in London involving over 7.5 tonne. The ratio of dead driver to dead other person, I'm sorry to be blunt, was 1 in 20. And the issue of cyclists and HGVs has been a challenge for London, and in particular companies like Crossrail that have done some excellent work. As a result of that, they've got some excellent results. What I'd like to do is to bring things to a wrap-up close and then take any questions. You're going to pose me a question, and I will ask to see if you can get the answer. So, begin.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Okay, the question that goes with it, for those that haven't seen it before, who saw the moonwalking bear on the first run through? 1, 2. For those that haven't seen it before, who saw the moonwalking bear on the second time through? So if somebody didn't see it the second time through, most people did. The reason that this works for me on many levels. It's a clever bit of work, and I know that some of you are familiar with it before. But if you understand what you're looking for, there's a bloody good chance you'll see it. And as a result of seeing it, you'll do the appropriate thing. And this is basically an underpinning principle of risk management. In my role as chair of the Safe Neighbourhood Board in Hillingdon, I used it at a public meeting to get over the issue to do with internet crime with elderly people. If you know what the problems are with certain aspects of emails, and you look for it, there's a chance you'll find it. As a result of it, you'll do what's necessary. Now that's at an individual level. For me, one of the other bits of work, which is the second to last slide, there's a bit of research that I came across when I was doing my Masters, which has stayed with me ever since. What you look for is what you find, and what you find is what you fix. You ain't going to look for it, you're not going to find it, so you're not going to fix it. In terms of risks associated with road safety, in terms of risks associated with road safety in general, there's significant opportunities to get your own house in order in terms of the management of your own journeys with your own staff in your own vehicle, or own staff in private vehicles. But you also need to be aware, because your drivers share this road space with somebody else that may not be as appropriately safe in terms of their conduct, which is a fundamental difference between managing work-related road safety and on-site road safety. You're not going to let anyone wander around your building site, your office premises, doing things stupidly for very long before you kick them out on their head. You can't do that on the road. And therefore, my advice, my plea, is that where you have contractual relationships with anybody that provides a service with you, and you've got a chance to include in the pre-qualification questionnaire, do you have safe systems of work with regard to the driving of work? And if they haven't, filter them out of the procurement stage. And finally, try to influence others. And that, I mean, you're not responsible for your staff travelling to work if they're travelling on a commuting journey. But there's significant benefits, sustainable benefits, if those individuals can be nudged towards doing the right thing. And if you wanted me to illustrate that with an answer, is I commuted into central London to Scotland Yard, from Tottenham, Chelsea, and I did over 30,000 miles over a few years on commuting journeys. And a number of times when people used to cycle past me through red lights, going back a couple of years now. And I used to ride and stop. It was only at the tail end that I couldn't drive fast enough with one person, but about 300 or 400 I stopped. And they never realised that they would get caught. But some of the work's going on with the Met Police and TfL are challenging cyclists. That, in my view, they're not the problem, but they don't help themselves if they don't adhere to the basic rules of the road, because they get treated by some second-class citizens. So all in all, it's get your own house in order, use your procurement policies and practices and procedures to extract safe behaviour from others, and then spread the gospel further. Thank you.